Vai deixando um comentário aí. Opa, seja bem-vindo aí. Vamos acompanhar isso aqui, que vai ser muito bom aparentemente. Eu deixei uma enquete aqui, tá aqui nos comentários, aqui no cantinho. Responde aí se você joga Diablo. E se não joga, escreve aqui no comentário por que não joga. Responde aí se você 20 minutos para começar o show. Enquanto não começa, vamos ver um outro vídeo aqui.
Fala galera, vocês estão no Gameplay RJ, quem fala com vocês é o David Jones e vamos para a notícia de hoje. Bom galera, é o seguinte, o EA Sports FC 25, o novo, né, jogo de futebol aí, o FIFA, né, digamos assim, vai ser revelado dia 17 de julho. Foi colocado e tem uma capa do Ultimate Edition. Tem aí na capa o Bellingham, como você pode ver, o Buffon, Aitana Bonmati, Zidane e Beckham, tá certo? Eles estão aí na frente. E aí, com várias taças e tal, olha, eu particularmente achei essa capa, se foi essa capa mesmo, que parece que é a capa do Ultimate Edition, mas eu achei essa capa bem... Sabe o que tá parecendo isso aqui? Tá parecendo uma imagem daquele filme Entre Facas e Segredos. Tá cara... Não, na moral, pega aí a imagem, por favor. Entre Facas e Segredos e bota. Tá cara esse estilo, tá ligado? Bom, mas tá bom, olha, tá aí. E a Sports FC dia 17 vai ser revelado oficialmente. E galera, é o seguinte, o trailer do GTA 6 chegou à insana marca de 200 milhões de visualizações no YouTube. Ó, lembrando que o vídeo atingiu 100 milhões de views em pouco mais de 24 horas. É um número impressionante, principalmente porque a Rockstar não falou mais nada do GTA, só aquilo ali que tem. Então 200 milhões de views, realmente o GTA 6, quando sair, rapaziada, vai ser uma das paradas mais alucinantes de todos os tempos de videogame. Simplesmente assim. Torcer pra realmente ser ano que vem. Bom, galera, e olha só, hein. Parece que tá rolando. Parece que é real mesmo que GTA 6 e a Rockstar estão vindo pro Brasil. Eu tô me arrepia todo falar isso. O que aconteceu hoje? Lembra que a gente falou um tempo atrás que tinha uma vaga de emprego de um gerente de marketing no Brasil e tal? Beleza. Agora, o que nós temos aqui é mais uma evidência muito maior do que... Agora é uma confirmação, digamos assim. O nosso mano, Ethan Hirsch, como vocês podem ver aqui, ele trabalha na Rockstar, ele é formado em Harvard, aparentemente, e trabalha na Rockstar. Aqui tem todas as coisas que ele faz, ele foi diretor de estratégia, senior director, é um cara lá da Rockstar, realmente. E foi publicado por ele, no LinkedIn dele, né, falando o seguinte, tá aqui. Olá, rede brasileiro. Ele fez ali né, tentou fazer um tradutor. Rockstar Games está buscando um gerente de marketing e comunicação focado no mercado BR. O candidato ideal deve ter experiência em videogames e interesse em apoiar os planos ambiciosos da Rockstar no Brasil. Se alguém tiver uma indicação ou estiver interessado no cargo, me fale. E aí tá um monte de gente falando aqui, né? E recomendando pessoas e tal. Tô louco pra que essa pessoa seja contratada logo, mas galera, isso aqui é evidência que a gente precisa, pô. A gente realmente vai ter representante brasileiro da Rockstar e do GTA 6, cara. Isso é muito, muito gigante, bicho. Porque assim, galera, você pode imaginar que isso é uma coisa comum. E essa que é a verdade. Praticamente todas as empresas grandes de videogame têm seus representantes do Brasil. Praticamente todas. As grandes, as importantes, se elas não têm um representante, tipo uma pessoa que trabalha, é uma agência, é uma assessoria de imprensa e tal. A Rockstar é nada. Nada. Eu acho que quem cuida da América Latina, que acaba cuidando do Brasil, mas virtualmente não tem. Sabe qual é? Não tem. E pela primeira vez, pelo menos de tudo que eu me lembro, não sei se no passado tinha, mas não é algo que eu consigo me lembrar, se você clicar aqui no, né, dentro do site da Rockstar, tá aqui, ó, as carreiras da Rockstar e tal. Todas as coisas que tem que fazer. A gente já falou sobre isso, né, Você tem um monte de coisas aqui importantes, então você pode aplicar aí também. Então, assim, isso aqui é muito gigante. Muito gigante. Eu tô muito feliz que a Rockstar tá finalmente trazendo alguém para trabalhar com o Brasil, no Brasil, e eu tô muito ansioso pra saber que é essa pessoa, porque eu gostaria muito de conversar com ela. Mas vamos ver. Mais de um ano antes do suposto lançamento do GTA V, então um tempo suficiente para conseguir trabalhar bem, né? E é isso. Vamos ver, né, como é que vai. Tomara mesmo que isso aqui aconteça e a gente tem essa pessoa aqui, porque mostra que a Rockstar está olhando mais para o Brasil e a gente precisa de mais disso. Bom, galera, finalizar por aqui. Muito obrigado a todo mundo que assistiu. Se vocês gostaram, esqueça de se inscrever, clica no gostei, comenta. Até a próxima com mais um jogo, mais um vídeo. Valeu!
Parece que o negócio vai bombar, viu? Cara, eu adoro essa música.
Hi, my name is Young. Today we're going to be listening
Essas
to
reações assim
BFG
é coisa muito
Division
legal.
from Doom. This was super requested after I listened to The Only Thing They Fear Is You from Doom Eternal, and I'm super stoked to hear it because I loved the previous track. So let's get into it. This is already so good.
A reação dessa menina vai ser um negócio louco. Vou ter que ir pausando para não dar problema de copyright.
It sounds like there's like a...
Olha
Yeah,
isso,
the hang
galera.
time, yeah. Yes. Keep going. Say more.
Esse negócio é muito louco. Cara, Doom é um negócio que transcende.
He just keeps doing it too. Wait, that was such a crispy little drum fill. I want that again. Let's get this wind up.
Em 2024 foi um ano marcante para a NVIDIA, não apenas como aquele momento em que ela se torna simplesmente a maior empresa nas bolsas de valores em termos de valor de mercado de todos os tempos e do mundo, mas também vai ser o momento em que a NVIDIA vai ter a chance de demonstrar definitivamente e inequivocamente a que ela veio. Mas também esse vai ser o momento, o ano, o ponto histórico em que ela demonstra que é capaz de superar o maior desafio de sua história. E é sobre isso que a gente vai falar no vídeo de hoje, mas lógico, só depois do recado dos nossos patrocinadores.
gvgmol.com, esse é o site confiável e seguro para você comprar as suas chaves de Windows 11, Windows 10 e pacote Office. Você pode optar pelo Windows 11 Pro por R$ 124 usando o cupom PCF25 ou ir no Windows 10, que é mais barato, sai por R$ 86 usando o mesmo PCF25 e fazer aquele upgrade para o Windows 11 gratuitamente. Sem esquecer também que o pacote Office sai por R$ 255 e o cupom do PCFX também vai. Eu recomendo para vocês que usem os links que estão aqui na descrição para vocês entrarem na GVGMOL e fazerem a festa, não tendo mais aquelas limitações chatas de quem não ativa o seu Windows e não tem um Windows original.
A NVIDIA, como uma empresa que tem uma identidade, que conseguiu conversar, de certa forma, com um público específico e que criou uma imagem dentro dessa imaginação popular, é uma empresa gamer. Hoje, o Jensen Huang, o CEO, fala como se a empresa fosse agora de inteligência artificial. E ele não está errado. A grande parte do seu lucro, da sua margem, da sua receita, vem hoje de servidores de inteligência artificial. A questão é que não foi assim historicamente. Na verdade, historicamente foi o contrário. Os recursos, os lucros advindos das suas plataformas e produtos gamers que fomentaram investimento em pessoas e recursos para construir, num futuro que hoje chegou, um mercado de inteligência artificial. E agora a NVIDIA vai ter uma chance de demonstrar que não somente é uma empresa grata ao que os gamers deram para ela, como também é uma empresa que não visa única e tão somente o lucro, a margem de lucro em cima de um produto, mas também de ter respeitos principiológicos a tudo aquilo que ela vem fazendo no mercado. E quando eu falo isso, eu digo que se em um determinado momento a NVIDIA pegou aquilo que dava lucro, que era o dinheiro dos gamers, e começou a investir em um outro segmento, por acreditar que aquele segmento seria o futuro, ela hoje também tem a chance de pegar o dinheiro advindo do lucro dos servidores de inteligência artificial e transformar, revolucionar o mercado gamer, ao qual ela deve muita coisa. E aí sim, fidelizar esse cliente não apenas por um custo-benefício bom, não apenas por uma tecnologia boa, mas por ele se identificar com o princípio por trás do que a NVIDIA vem fazendo. Não seria apenas uma empresa que vende placa melhor do que a concorrência, que vende uma placa que tenha mais tecnologia, mas também uma empresa que se preocupa com uma indústria crescente, pulsante e lucrativa de uma maneira principiológica mesmo, sem pensar necessariamente no lucro. Porque, veja, as margens que a NVIDIA pratica em inteligência artificial são muito altas. Ao ponto de que, provavelmente, ela pense, cara, por que eu vou cobrar uma margem baixa para o gamer se eu posso pegar esse chip e vender para a inteligência artificial e cobrar uma margem muito alta? E é daí que vem a oportunidade da NVIDIA de dizer assim, mesmo eu tendo essa chance, eu vou me manter fiel ao público que se manteve fiel a mim. Eu vou revolucionar o mercado gamer, criando produtos com capacidade de inteligência artificial para vários tipos de workloads e cargas de trabalho, ao mesmo tempo que focando esse uso em plataformas gamers, jogos, inteligência artificial para NPCs e vários outros exemplos como DLSS que a gente já demonstrou em um outro vídeo que a gente fala sobre o futuro das placas de vídeo da NVIDIA na série 50. Mas, ao mesmo tempo que ela pode trazer isso, ela pode simplesmente se demonstrar uma empresa que visa única e exclusivamente lucro, cobrar preços absurdos para a gente, independentemente de qualquer justificativa que eles venham a apresentar, dizer assim, não, mas é porque a placa está ficando caro, né? Porque... Não, gente. Nesse momento, vocês têm como cobrar pouco da gente, porque vocês estão lucrando muito com outros segmentos, da mesma forma que, um tempo atrás, a gente fazia vocês lucrarem bastante e vocês investiriam em outros segmentos para agora estar marchando, né, e surfando na onda em que vocês estão nesse momento. Da mesma forma, a NVIDIA vai ter um dos seus maiores desafios. Porque para a gente, que é cliente, gamer, a única coisa que a gente consegue enxergar é quais são os produtos que eu tenho capacidade financeira de arcar. A gente não se preocupa se aquele produto está gerando uma margem de lucro muito alta para a NVIDIA, porque a gente não quer saber, a gente quer jogar, o que tem oferecido no mercado é isso, e eu não estou querendo me preocupar com quanto que a Nvidia tá ganhando em cima de mim. Só que no
7 minutinhos, 7 minutinhos. Aí, começou. Já deixa o comentário aí. Vamos trocando uma ideia. Deixa o comentário aí. Enquanto isso aqui, vamos ver esse cara aqui.
I do not engage in farewells. Most make too much of beginnings and
Vocês vão
endings,
adorar isso aqui.
when each is one step on a journey that turns endings into beginnings. But we were all children once, seeing the world through our parents' eyes, walking the paths set before us. I have the memories of me from the past, tempered by the 1,000 versions of myself that bridge into the present. I was once called Lenarian, the first amongst those born to Sanctuary, the hopes of refugees from the eternal conflict made flesh. In my youth, I was haunted by dreams of a world without balance, shrouded in chaos. A descent into utter evil meant terrible destruction. A turn to the complete absence of evil meant stagnation and decay. I told my mother what I saw, perhaps hoping she would see what I did. I sometimes wonder if my vision drove Lilith to respond with such madness and savagery. She sought to protect her children, but the violence she wrought could not discriminate between those she wished to save and the threats she chose to eradicate. I lost my closest friend and confidant to her actions. And more than that again, the consequences of choice ripple through time. As for my father, I believe Denarius came to think of us as a disgrace, that we should have never existed, only agreeing to consider alternatives to our elimination due to the protests of others. I think he would have followed through with his original plans, had my mother not murdered the other refugees. He exiled Lilith to the void for her actions, but could not bring himself to harm us. So he took the World Stone, hidden on Sanctuary from the high heavens and the burning hells, and altered its resonance, so our powerful birthright diminished over time. Inarius disappeared, and our gifts, or curse, were forgotten. But for one who is eternal, my father should have known that nothing remains static. I tried to dwell in the present, the call of the balance fading to whisper, and find equilibrium in other pursuits. I found peace in the cycle, in the simplicity of the world around me, in love and life. But that peace was shattered, the cycle abused. Seeking a new path, I came to know the great dragon Tragor, fulcrum of the balance, born of creation, defined by the very existence of Sanctuary. He is more its guardian than any other can claim. No longer defined by my parents, I mastered the art of necromancy while committing myself to Tragul's teachings. Eventually, he gave me a new name, one better suited for the path I chose for myself. Rathma, meaning keeper of the balance. My function and my duty alongside Tragul's for centuries to follow. Disquiet grew as I sensed the return of my mother and father. It seemed the burning hells had been aware of Sanctuary for centuries, allowing it to survive in service of using humanity as a turning point in their never-ending war. The Temple of the Triune had been created by the Prime Evils in order to sow instability and bring humanity into the fold. Inarius responded by founding the Cathedral of Light, which started a proxy battle that culminated in the Sin War. As the Prime Evils destabilized Sanctuary, Lilith secretly reawakened humankind's latent power as a means to undermine the Triune and Cathedral of Light. Inarius discovered her plan, foiled her efforts, and banished her to the Void once again. He was too late. Humanity's power had begun to spread thanks to two brothers. Eldician Diomed, elder son of Diomedes, wanted nothing more than the simple, worthy life of a farmer, and instead became a catalyst for upheaval. Mendeln, his younger brother, found an affinity for the balance and a desire for understanding. He became my student, learning about the balance as the Sin War raged on. The brothers' efforts against both the Triune and the Cathedral of Light gained them followers of their own. Eldician shared the power of our birthright, and they became known as the Adirum. This act alerted the high heavens to Sanctuary's existence, and set the stage for a frightful clash between angels and demons, with Sanctuary as the field of combat. Tragul kept the armies of the high heavens at bay as long as he could, while I went to my father to plead for aid. Enraged and unhelpful, he banished me to the Void with my mother, where I would have remained trapped were it not for Mendeln, who brought me back to Sanctuary. The battle was deadly and fraught, and would have been deadlier still had Eldician not brought about its end in an astonishing display of power. Reaching heights greater than I have ever seen, he willed both armies back from whence they came. In doing so, Eldician realized that his power was as great a threat to Sanctuary as the heavens and hells. So it was, he sacrificed himself in an eruption of raw energy that saw a return to the mundane for his followers. His choice was profound enough to affect those who came to stand in judgment of us. The Angiras Council, leaders of the high heavens, held a vote on whether to eradicate Lilith and Inarius' sanctuary, or to allow us to remain. Imperius voted for eradication. Ariel and Ethereal to allow our potential to develop. Malthael abstained. We despaired an even vote would have meant our doom. Ethereal, the Archangel of Justice, who had come to Sanctuary of his own accord to witness Inarius' crimes for himself, was so moved by Eldician's choice, he voted to spare us. As the Council debated on how to prevent the burning hells from corrupting Sanctuary, they accepted a bargain from Mephisto himself. A truce, wherein both sides would withdraw from Sanctuary and allow it to grow, untouched, so long as humanity was no longer a threat, and Inarius punished for his crimes. To this end, humanity was left to its own devices, their powerful birthright once again diminished, and Inarius was dragged into the depths of the burning hells to suffer at the hands of Mephisto. Tragul protected Mendeln's memory, a bittersweet gift as those around him remembered nothing of Eldisian's sacrifice. Mendeln shed his mortal name and accepted one from Tragul, Kolan, meaning teacher. But the truth of the balance must be passed on to future generations. Kolan would go on to pass our teachings to his own students, necromancers, who would become known as the priests of Rathma. It has been their duty and function to keep the balance as the millennia pass. My dreams have once again been haunted by shattered images. A vision of the end of Sanctuary that coalesced into prophecy. A prophecy I know Inarius is driven to interfere with, believing it about him, a savior, piercing hatred's heart in hell. Our choices always betray us. I locked the gates to hell, knowing it is only a matter of time before he discovers what I've done and comes demanding the key. One way or another, we hurtle towards the prophecy's end. Or perhaps its beginning. For what is death but a transformation? I saw my corpse, and from my mouth crawled hatred. A father burned his children on a pyre, and a mother molded a new age from the ashes. I saw the weak made strong, a pack of lambs feasting on wolves. Tears of blood rained on a desert jewel, and the way to hell was torn asunder. Then
Começou, começou, começou.
Akrat, cheers, chicham. Mini de cheese. Mini de Sukudo, Mart Solan. Akrat, cheers, chicham. Mini de cheese. Mini.
Boy, young one, are you all right?
Akrat, cheers, chicham. Mini de cheese. Mini de suit.
Nerel?
Sukudo, Mart.
Oh, you're not well. Please, please, my child, let me help you.
Stay away from me!
Nerel! Is that how I raised you?
No, Mother. But I must carry this burden alone. I must get to Akarat's tomb.
But look at you. You're killing yourself.
I don't know how much longer I can...
I'm here.
Estamos assistindo aí o trailer pra ver o que vem a seguir.
I missed you so much.
I'm so proud of you. But now, I need you to give up.
No. Of course it's you. You monster.
Let go. No. You made a choice. And I warned you, little magpie. There would be consequences.
No. I control the stone.
You hold the stone. You control nothing.
Cara, sempre é uma pedra.
Maybe I could use some help.
Hello, Diablo community. I'm Adam Fletcher, Community Director for Diablo. Welcome to our Spiritborn showcase, where we're doing a deep dive for this all-new class coming to Diablo 4, which will include a series of interviews followed by Q&A from Twitch chat. I'm joined here today with Game Director Brent Gibson.
Thanks, Adam. We've been working hard to make something unique for Diablo, and we're finally here to actually talk about it.
Brent, I can remember us at BlizzCon where we showed off our very first cinematic for Vessel of Hatred. Now we're actually here to showcase the Spiritborn for the first time. We're glad to have you back for the full reveal.
Thanks. We've set out to make an all-new class that comes from the jungles of Nahantu, an apex predator with a deep connection to the spirit realm. So, without further ado, let's kick off this deep dive to the Spiritborn.
Only a few among my people can become Spiritborn. As children, the most promising face judgment in the mist. Our trial begins and ends with pain. Those who are not called are culled. For the weak, all paths end here. For the worthy, that path leads to power beyond compare, and a sacred charge to wield it well. Though the mortal world was
Cara,
designed
parece
to break us,
druida.
our hearts, our minds, our bodies, there is another, which makes us.
É um necromante com druida.
We are without fear. We are without equal. We walk with the ancient guardians of the unformed lands. Their power is our power. Their cause is our cause. We forge unbreakable bonds in the spirit realm to defeat the horrors of this one. For we are Spiritborn.
Cara, que nerfado. É um mago com necromancer com druida.
Wow, and there it is, the first look at the Spiritborn, the apex predator from the jungle. Awesome to finally show it off, and what an incredible trailer. To talk more about the Spiritborn, we would like to introduce Eleni Rivera-Colon, narrative designer on Diablo 4. Welcome, Eleni.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here to talk about the Spiritborn class. I'm also a little nervous.
It's okay. We're live. We're doing this live here for everyone. But obviously, Eleni, we just saw here in the trailer with the Spiritborn, and we saw a little bit about that spirit realm. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that spirit realm is?
Yeah, so I mean, to put it plainly, the spirit realm is a place where spirits go. It's this deeply spiritual place that's a byproduct of Sanctuary's creation. So, as you may know, the angels have the high heavens, the demons have the burning hells, and we have the spirit realm.
You know, we're hearing a little bit about the high heavens and the burning hells here, and players have actually seen both of those places specifically. Kind of like, what does the spirit realm actually look like for players?
Yeah, we really love this concept that the spirit realm is shaped by humanity. So if that's the case, the foundation of that would actually be Sanctuary. So you could imagine being in the middle of the jungle and you're surrounded by these tall trees and these ancient structures. And when you cross over the veil into the spirit realm, you're going to see a ghostly reflection of just that. The big key difference is that you're going to see all the spirits and the creatures that exist there.
Yeah, there are these massive creatures that protect the realm from spirits they protect the realm and the spirits from corruption. So the Spiritborn class have this harmonious bond and connection with these massive creatures that are called the Spirit Guardians, and they work together to ward the land.
It's awesome to hear about the Spirit Guardians, and people saw them in the trailer a little bit there. Can you actually tell us a little bit more about who these Spirit Guardians are?
Yeah, so if the spirit realm is shaped by humanity, we love the idea that the guardians are formed from human belief. And so if you're trying to survive in the jungle and protection is a thing that you are pouring all of your belief, your hope into, that belief it's magical. It's got power in itself, and it can actually create a creature that represents that. It could represent protection.
Yeah, so as Brent is saying, the Spirit Guardians are this complex creation of Sanctuary's creation along with this powerful human belief. And Spiritborns devote their entire
Falando da
lives
criação complexa que é com a crença.
bond, because these Spirit Guardians are powerful. It's this idea, right, of what these gods look like, and so they can help protect both the realm and Nahantu.
We saw
Falando da
in the
crença
trailer
dos
some
deuses da
gameplay,
proteção
if you're playing the
de ambos
Spiritborn, you
os
can actually
reinos, né?
summon
Espiritual
one
e
of
o
these in there.
terreno.
Is that something you can do on demand? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, very early on in concepting, we saw this one piece of a simple warrior raising their staff above their head and this massive spirit creature forming behind them. And that really became the lightning rod to a lot of thought-provoking ideas. I mean, we knew what we wanted to do mechanically with the class, but that image really solidified that the idea of summoning a god into battle was really cool. And that actually became the cornerstone for a lot of our development from then on out.
Yeah, so talking about Spirit Guardians and summoning them, the Spiritborn class can summon 4 Spirit Guardians. The first one that I want to talk about is Razoka, and this guardian manifests in the form of a
dos 4
jaguar. So
espíritos
the belief of
que o
courage and
Spiritborn
ferocity,
invoca.
striking on the hunt, attacking a kill with no fear or reservations. The second one is Balazan, appearing as this massive centipede. The belief is balance and persistence. So although some people might see it as fear, it represents harmony and balance, so the give and take of life. And then we have Quatli. The manifestation of this is a majestic eagle, right? So to represent awareness and finesse, soaring above it all, having keen awareness of its surroundings,
Cada
and acting
muito
with
provavelmente vai
intent.
ter elemental
And then the last one is Woomba. This
predominante.
guardian manifests in a powerful gorilla, so this beacon of protection and strength, and a movable force that holds its
Com isso
ground
aí a
and
gente
sustains
tem
under pressure.
aquela
So it's great because we've heard a little
completa,
bit
né?
about the Spirit
Aquela
Realm, we've heard
árvore de
about these
skills que a
4
gente está
awesome
acostumado, que
guardians.
passa por 4
Like,
tipos
can
de
you tell us a
elementos
little bit more about kind of the
específicos.
star of the show now, the
Então,
Spiritborn
aqui
itself?
nós temos, muito
Yeah, so I
provavelmente esse
think
gorila deve
before
ser
we really dive in,
a
I want to talk
última
about
parte, né?
Akarat, who's really
Lá
important with the
debaixo da árvore de
Spiritborn and the
skills.
Spirit Realm. For those who don't know, Akarat is this prophet that believed in the human experience
Mais do
and that
que
it
a
gives us this
classe, eu
unique
tô
power. We have
ansioso
this
para
light
ver
within us.
as
And
missões,
that
né?
light
Porque eu
gives us
amo a
the ability
história.
to question and
Essa
to
história é
doubt and
muito
to
rica.
challenge. When Akarat made his way to his mother's homeland in Nahantu, he felt this strong otherworldly presence, and he would spend a lot of time with one of his apostles, Isavete, trying to uncover what this mystery was. What was this feeling when he got to the realm, or when he got to the land of Nahantu, until he eventually discovers this veil, and that's the veil between the spirit realm and sanctuary. And he realized that this was this untouched place from neither angels or demons. They had never really had any sort of influence there. So Akrat and his dedicant Isavete would spend a lot of time studying, and he would be the first person and living being to cross this veil. And then after Akrat died,
Deixa eu comentar aí,
his apostle would
conta aí o
then
que você
take
tá
on the
achando dessa
mantle and
classe
then
nova.
found the Spiritborn traditions
Eu
that we
acho
know
que
today.
vai ser muito
Hearing
nerfado.
about the
Acho que vai ser
Spiritborn, and of
algo
course,
muito
like, I'm sure
poderoso
this is a
e
burning question
a
from the
gameplay pode ser
community,
muito interessante,
but
muito
the
frenética.
Sanctuary has a long
Mas
storied
eu acho que o
history.
dano pode ser
Where
excessivo.
have the Spiritborn been
E
throughout
com
all
dano
of this?
excessivo não
Yeah,
necessariamente
so
fica
for
legal, porque
anybody
tem a
who
questão do
knows
desafio, né?
the
Tomara que o
lore of
balanceamento entre essa
Diablo,
classe
this
nova e
region is
todo
no
mundo, né,
stranger to Mephisto,
seja legal. Porque
right?
assim,
So
pelo
if you
que eu
go
vi,
back
dá
to
pra
Diablo 2
emendar
and
diversas
you look at the story
skills
there,
uma na outra,
his
que
original
criando algum
soulstone
tipo de
was
combo, né?
imprisoned in this place. And its presence corrupted the Zakarum faith, it corrupted the region, and the Spiritborn remember this. And so over the course of what's been happening in D4, they've decided to stay at arm's length out of fear that history might repeat itself.
Yeah, so like I said before, this is an untouched realm. It's pure. This is something so sacred. And with Nerel coming back with the Soulstone, this is a huge problem for the people of Nahantu, but specifically the Spiritborn that are trying to protect this land.
Yeah, and at this point, with him back, they have no choice but to rejoin the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear more about the Spiritborn and where they originated from. And of course, thank you, Eleni, for taking us into the spirit realm in itself. You know, we've talked about the new class and how that was created and what they've been up to. Next, we're actually going to take a look at how the art and concepts were designed. We are now joined by my blood brother, art director Nick Celano, who is here to show us how the Spiritborn visually came to be. Nick, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Adam. I'm really excited to talk about the Spiritborn finally.
I know, it's been a long time coming.
Been a long
time coming. Nick, will you tell us a little bit more about like how this class came to be, especially from the art side?
Yeah, first of all, like that trailer, like what an origin story for a Diablo class. Like you got to go into the jungle, you answer the call, or you're cold. Like it's pretty rock and roll. And on the art
Essa
side, like,
floresta, ela
that
lembra
stuff.
muito a floresta que a gente tinha no terceiro ado do Diablo 2, que era onde você enfrentava Mephisto. E pelo que eu entendi, tem alguma ligação com o Mephisto aqui, né? Dentro da história. Eu não sei, tem que jogar.
Brent mentioned that like kind of lightning rod moment. That's something that the art team really focuses on. When those moments happen, we really lock into that and start to do a lot of iteration. So like, concept will start casting a really wide net, but when that happens, we really start to bring it in and we start to really do a lot of concepts around that so that we can kind of get that tagline that the team needs, which is like creating the living, breathing embodiment of the spirit realm.
Yeah, and it's really, after we get past that initial inspirational piece, we want to like drill down into finding that iconic piece. And so when you look at some of the imagery that we're showing today, you can see how we're taking that embodiment and we're bringing it into all of the iconic look of that character. We wanted a class that wouldn't necessarily wear armor to protect themselves, but rather become the guardian that they're all about. And so if you're into the Jaguar, you're wearing the Jaguar helm. Your markings are the spots and patterns that you would see on that creature. The way that you move through the jungle would also be a big part of that package. And then once we have that iconic look, we can actually roll it out to the rest of the team.
Yeah, that's really the DNA of like where we start going. Like those iconic images drive the entire art department at that point. And that's our North Star. So we can move into things like how do we get the Spirit Guardians on screen? How do they fit into the combat? If you think about the eagle, does the full eagle show up? Is it just feathers? How do we represent that? And how do we like ramp that up through our visuals so you can start with something, a little more on a certain scale and get to this like epic moment. We also want to explore, visually, like visual iconography at the same time. So while we're doing all that iteration and stuff with the iconic looks and the skills, we're also starting to get into like, what is the identity of the class? Where do we want to put this iconography? And like, what is that visual footprint that they're going to take up on the screen?
It's seeing all this like badass concept art. Like shout out to our concept artists on the art team.
Amazing.
Yeah, so good. Like how do you guys actually take this from like concept now to actually building out the character from some of this concept art?
Yeah, once we have alignment between the design direction that we want to go, we understand kind of roughly mechanically and from a design perspective where we want it to be and where we want it from an art direction standpoint. We sit down with each department and we actually roll out the idea. We pitch them, and we're like, hey, this is what we're thinking, and really get them to understand where we're trying to head so that when they go off in their crafts and make the best work that they possibly can make, the sum of all the parts end up with a killer class like the Spiritborn.
Collaboration's a big thing. And, it really starts with the character art department. They take these like 2D images and bring them to life in 3D. They will start to figure out materials, the fine details of how our armor's crafted, to like big silhouette shapes. One of the interesting things about this class is we started to recognize that like the helms, the gauntlets, the belts were really great places to like hone in on those like visual elements. Yeah. And another nice thing is like the armor really started to kind of come into the space of being very functional and practical. You'll notice that like the legs are kind of open, the upper body's kind of open. It's because we're making a really fast, agile class. So we want everything to kind of line up. And like Brent said, like they don't need to be fully armored. They are protected by the Spirit Guardians. Their offense is their defense, and it shows when you play it. Speaking of fast and agile, we move to tech art. Tech art really is the team that will kind of find what our limits are and kind of allow us to break them a little bit. So they do a lot of range of motion tests. They're trying to figure out how we can get really dynamic poses, really dynamic lines of actions, and we want to push that because this class really needs us to kind of be in the spot where we're like kind of pushing the boundaries of what we've done normally.
Yeah, it's awesome because like you guys mentioned like super like hypermobile class and so the apex predator in the jungle itself, like how do you put that towards something like animation now, like getting the character to move and kind of telegraphing that through that animation?
Yeah, like one of the key elements here is making sure that we have a combat archetype that's unique. So if you take a look at the original 5 classes, each one of them has a very distinct style. And so when we're thinking about the Spiritborn, we naturally went to martial arts. And what does that mean for the movement through the jungle? And actually, I feel like we found a really good pairing there.
Yeah, like the animation team, like they went crazy with reference. They were looking at Muay Thai, Taekwondo, kickboxing, boxing, karate. There was a stunt woman that did these amazing like reference materials that we saw. And the really interesting thing here is we're not trying to like just mimic a martial arts style. We're really trying to find the best pieces of them and seeing where they fit, how can we manipulate them, how can we rearrange them in ways that make a really unique and interesting fighting style for the Spiritborn. Once the animation team has that, and like they, again, they have a wide range of options that they're looking at, they start to figure out like where it fits for each Guardian. So, for example, the gorilla is blunt force, lots of strength. The jaguar is cleaves, multi-hit combos, aggression. The centipede is like open palm strikes for applying poisons and unearthing things from the ground. And the eagle is about really precision movements and repositioning on the battlefield. So like they nailed it when it came to that.
Honestly, it's like the combination of all the things that we put together. We'd been talking about, it's like we've almost invented our own martial arts style for Diablo. And we'd been talking about this for the last few days with all the people that we've met with. And they actually said, hey, does it have a name? And currently it doesn't. So like for those of you at home, if you got ideas,
check out the Spiritborn gameplay and like, if you have names, suggestions, like
we got to name this thing.
Exactly, we're all ears.
That's right.
Well, we've heard about, concept, and we've heard about character art, tech art, and now we just heard about animation. I always call it kind of like the frosting on the cake, and that is kind of VFX, and that makes everything kind of pop a little bit. How does VFX actually play into something like the Spiritborn?
Yeah, at this point, VFX is really they're an amazing bridge between like gameplay and the visuals of the game. And they had a really important lift, which was to try to figure out like, how do we represent like the spirit realm and these like elemental spirit guardians like together? What is that fantasy and what is that story we're telling? So Eleni mentioned earlier that like there's this veil, right? So we needed to understand like, how do you get the jaguar, for example, to like come through this veil, show up in Sanctuary and exit through the veil? So visually we're looking at like, what is the spirit realm? So we have this like kind of bluish white mist. They come in through the veil. That bluish white mist kind of like trails off of them. They become physical. The jaguar is now engulfed in flames. This spirit guardian. It kills everything on the screen that you can like that's around it, and then it exits through that veil and kind of like transitions into that blue white mist again. That's a fantastic story for us to tell, and it also allows us to start to understand like what are our pieces with the VFX and how to then ramp up our basic skills to be maybe lean a little more into the elemental side. Our core skills, we start to like kind of blend the two together. Maybe it's like the gorilla fish show up and they look like that spirit element, and then they, then you go into the ultimates where it's just like our spectacles like ramped up. And to be honest with you, like when it all comes together, like there is a feel to this class that is really awesome. Kind of like inherently martial arts has a rhythm and a cadence to it. This class has that. It's fantastic to look at. You feel it when you play it, and the art team, they killed it. They did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I gotta give another shout out to the Diablo 4 art team. Absolutely killed it. The Spiritborn is fantastic. It's great to look at, great to play. But Nick, thank you so much for walking us through the creation of the Spiritborn. Reminder for everyone watching from home, we'll actually be holding a Q&A at the end of today's Spiritborn Showcase, similar to how we always do with all our live streams. You can drop your questions in the Diablo Twitch chat, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible towards the end of the show. We've heard the lore, we've seen the art. Now let's get ready to talk about some gameplay. I know a lot of people are excited to hear more about how this class actually plays. So next up, we have Bjorn Mikkelsen, class designer, on stage to talk about the gameplay for the Spiritborn. Bjorn is actually here to tell us more about the Spiritborn's overall class kit and design. And later on, we'll get into some itemization, which I know every fan wants to hear about because itemization is, of course, incredible, especially within Diablo. Bjorn, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I know Bjorn will be a fan favorite here because he's going to walk us through all the skills and the gameplay for how it works. So Bjorn, can you kick us off and tell us, a little bit about this new class?
Absolutely. So yeah, just high level, what is this class? Excellent question. So basically what Spiritborn are, they are these jungle warriors who are empowered by the spirits. They're sort of this dexterity focused class and sort of masters of martial arts and hand-to-hand combat. And so what they do is ultimately all of their actions and their movements, they sort of resonate with the spirits to form sort of these unique combat styles as they're fighting. They sort of mix and match them to hit whatever sort of build they need.
Awesome. So if you are a current Diablo player right now, or let's say I'm a current Diablo player, which I am, I play a lot of Rogue or Barb, where would you kind of place the speed and aggression of the Spiritborn?
Yeah, I would say Spiritborn is definitely probably our fastest, most aggressive class. It's got multiple gap closers built into its basic attacks. It's got several movement skills, very high damage on those, as well as several ways to upgrade its evade skill as well. It's all about kind of getting on a target, sticking to it, and killing it.
Awesome. I know we had footage earlier of within the trailer of players actually being able, and we talked about this earlier, players being able to actually summon in these spirit guardians. So can you just summon a giant jaguar into battle or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, kind of in addition to being these master martial artists, because they're empowered by these spirits, you'll see parts of the spirits, but then ultimately with the ultimates, the spirits themselves will show up on the battlefield and they'll empower you and deal damage.
And it's really the core of the fantasy, right? If we talk about power fantasies, summoning the god into battle is the power fantasy for this class. And one of the things that I really liked about that is that we were getting a bunch of feedback early on about making ultimates more meaningful, and we were actually able to do that with this class ground up.
Awesome. I know people are probably dying to know, okay, let's jump into some Spirit Guardians. So I think this is a great opportunity. Maybe we should start off with the Jaguar being the first one. Bjorn, do you want to take us through the Jaguar itself?
Sure. Yeah, starting off, Jaguar is a great one. Jaguar is, as we've kind of touched on before, it is sort of this manifestation of just the hunter. It's exhilaration, it's violence, it's aggression. It's attacking repeatedly, kind of just constant pressure as it's going. It's got these ramping mechanics to it. It's got lots of kill streaks. Mechanically speaking, the way we've kind of translated this, its primary focus is attack speed, and it chases that through a new keyword and mechanic that we call ferocity. This is a stacking buff that it can generate, usually via Jaguar skills, that will increase the attack speed of all of its skills, but it will also enhance other Jaguar skills so you can use them more often, reduce their cooldowns, that sort of thing. Moving on to an example, I guess, of a Jaguar skill. First off, here's one we have Ravager. This is a new type of skill we're adding to the game called Incarnate skills. They all have a passive and active effect. This one allows you to maintain your ferocity at just a minimum level, so you're all just a little bit fast. But then when you activate it, you kind of go full Jaguar mode. It gives you additional attacks, kind of whenever you hit something, it does an extra strike. So it can even turn skills that are deal a little bit less damage, they can now deal extra damage just whenever you hit something. Moving on to another skill, we have Rushing Claw. This one is the Jaguar's kind of primary mobility skill. It will dash you through a target and slash everything along the way. And the key to this one is you can kind of use it over and over and over again, multi-strike your enemies. And then finally, of course, we have the ultimate, the Hunter. This will actually manifest the Jaguar onto the battlefield. You'll leap through the air. It's also a movement skill. And when you land, the Jaguar will destroy everything. And it also has upgrades to kind of help chase the kill streak vibe. There's a chance to reset the cooldown after you kill something with it.
Yeah, so if you look at all of these things as a package, you start to see almost a combat archetype built into each Guardian themselves. And that was actually something that was really important to us. So if you were speccing into the Jaguar, it's important to those types of players who do want to keep the attack speed up, that do want to keep their kill streaks going. And you're going to see this as like a through line that each particular Guardian will have their own thing.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the fast, frantic gameplay, and I will say I have a little bit of bias towards the Jaguar for sure. But I know we want to go on to the other Guardians for sure. And for all our tanky friends out there, Bjorn, do you want to walk us through the Gorilla?
Absolutely. Yeah, moving on to the Gorilla. The Gorilla, core concept behind protection and defense. But it's not just like passive defense. This is a very active defensive play style where you're shrugging off the damage, but you're also returning it to your attacker. So it's really got this kind of core of like retribution also sort of built into it. Its core mechanic and stat that we work with is damage reduction. It chases this in two ways. One is through using block, sort of actively blocking damage, as well as a second new keyworded mechanic called resolve. This is also a stacking buff, but this one falls off whenever you get hit, so it's really important to keep stacking it and kind of keep stealing yourself and building your resolve back up, but as long as you have any stacks of it, you get the full damage reduction bonus. So moving on to just a couple examples for Gorilla skills. Starting off, we have Crushing Hand. This is their core spender skill. Kind of just does what it says. We'll smash your enemies to pieces. Kind of neat thing about it is it's actually two separate attacks that kind of overlap in the middle. So you can sort of prioritize a single target and deal double damage to it. Another attacking skill that we have, this one's Payback. This one really leans hard into the sort of aspect of retribution that we have going on. This one will deal a large amount of damage, and that damage will ramp up the more something has hit you. So it's really good for just like ending a fight if you need to. But also like as things are hitting you, that will reduce its cooldown. So kind of you have this flow of like being able to sort of like end fights, but also kind of keep hitting as you go. And then finally, again, we have the ultimate skill, bringing in the Gorilla itself. The skill is called the Protector. It creates a large protected area on the battlefield that will grant you barrier while you're inside of it, as well as several other defensive bonuses that you can spec into with it. And the Gorilla will just smash any enemies that try to come and harm you while you're in it.
Yeah, if you like that bruiser archetype, like this is the build for you. It is definitely about that give and take of damage. I mean, you'd said it earlier. Anyone who's been looking for a tank or a tank-like build in Diablo, this is the one that you're going to want to spec into as a part of your kit.
Yeah, it sounds like a really unique way of being able to, especially for tank players, to like bring damage to enemies and stuff like that, which is so awesome. So next, on to our third Guardian. Of course, we have the Eagle. Bjorn, do you want to take us through the Eagle?
Yeah, so the Eagle, kind of soaring above it all, we've got this Guardian that represents precision and accuracy and kind of finesse. Its ability, its freedom of movement, like a lot of the movement that the class has is very aggressive, very in your face, and the Eagle really is able to kind of take that to another level and kind of go wherever it wants. In addition to that, it can also sort of like extend its attacks to sort of pseudo-ranged playstyles. Allows it to really like prioritize a target and sort of like hit from anywhere. So its core stat that it cares about is movement speed. That allows it kind of, like I said, able to kind of go anywhere it wants and sort of tactically reposition on the battlefield. And it also has several ways to sort of amplify its evade skill, adding damage, that sort of thing to it. So moving into just a couple examples, we of course have to start off with Soar. This is sort of Spiritborn's premier mobility skill. Takes you up into the air, out of the battle for a second, able to dodge mechanics with that if you need to. But also, because the Eagle is all about kind of those big impacts as well, it will create a target area where you're going to come down and make those enemies vulnerable so that it just amplifies the damage when you land. Moving on to another example, we have Razor Wings. This is a damaging skill for the Eagle. This one has kind of this cool back and forth where it sends it out, allows you to hit something at range, but because it also returns to you, it sort of rewards you for the tactical positioning on the battlefield, so you can sort of line it up so it'll hit different things as it comes back. And then, of course, our ultimate skill, the Seeker, bringing in the Eagle itself to just annihilate your enemies with damage. You can cast it anywhere on the battlefield. It charges up and then blasts off. The blast can be upgraded to be a guaranteed critical strike, and while it's on the battlefield, it will also make everything vulnerable for you. This is also like one of the first ultimates that we have, which will have multiple charges, so you can kind of use it back to back or like prioritize a target with it, and there's like a lot of player agency with that.
Yeah, this is really for that tactical player, you know, where positioning is super important. You don't necessarily want to be constantly in the fray, so you still want to output that damage. Maybe you want to put it in a particular place in the encounter, but you can do it by going in and then you can get right back out. So for those players who really like that tactical positioning, that's what the Eagle is for.
Yeah, it seems like the Eagle gives you that extra freedom of like in mobility, so you can kind of move in and out, especially with things like soar, which is sick to see for sure.
It's one of my favorites.
So unique for Diablo 4 for sure on that end. Last but not least, of course, this is probably our most unique Spirit Guardian, and probably one that I'm sure a lot of people are like looking at and going like, oh, this has got to be crazy, and that is the Centipede. So Bjorn, how's the Centipede play out?
Yeah, so moving to the Centipede. The Centipede's very unique. It represents this sort of abstract concept of the cycle of life and death, and the way we've kind of chosen to interpret that is that it's sort of this epicenter of attrition, but it's also like really about just kind of like this endless or inescapable sort of persistence, and that's like really bad for your enemies, but kind of really good for you. So its core mechanics that it works with that persistence is damage over time, poisoning, crowd controls, that sort of thing, but then it uses those things to sort of empower and sustain itself, so also like leeching life and that sort of thing back to you, sort of draining your enemies as you kill them. So moving on to just a quick example, Stinger is our core skill for the Centipede. This one does a large amount of damage in a small area in front of you, but the sort of interesting thing about it is that that damage will also echo out to any nearby poisoned enemies. So it kind of has this adaptive, like, dynamic range that it has, sort of depending on like how much you've been spreading your poisons around the field. So it can like basically like hit the whole screen if you really want to. Another skill example that we have would be Scourge. Scourge kind of takes that sort of like oppressive control that the Centipede has, and it will fear and it will slow and poison enemies and sort of disrupt any kind of like strategies they might have going on and just sort of allow you to turn the tables on them. And then finally, we have the ultimate skill, bringing in the Centipede itself onto the battlefield. This is the Devourer. Poison laser beams, globs of poison everywhere. Just the Centipede kind of wrecking the entire battlefield. It's got upgrades which will also allow it to instantly execute enemies who have been fully poisoned, sort of helping the cycle of life and death to speed up a little bit there.
Yeah, this is clearly our most Diablo Guardian that we have. It's becoming a fan favorite very quickly. The people who have gotten hands-on with it have a lot to say about it. But the cool thing about this one is we took on a really unique design challenge. Like, how do you take a concept of damage over time, dealing damage, regenerating life, and make that kind of the core of an entire archetype? I thought you guys did a fantastic job at getting it there. For those Type A players who really want to manipulate the field and keep that damage up and keep that resilience going, this is definitely that class for you.
Yeah, I have to call out. It's so crazy seeing a giant Centipede behind me right now, but I know a lot of players at home are probably looking at each of these 4 Spirit Guardians and they're going like, hey, this is probably the one I'm going to go with, just seeing some of the gameplay and some of the play styles. But I think one big question that probably a lot of people have is, are you kind of forced to go down one of these, or can you actually do some mix and match, or how does that work?
You know, freedom of choice is really important for this class. So if you want to go all in on one of them, go for it. Like, there's no problem in doing that. There's benefits that you can see from it, but there's also benefits for mixing and matching. Like, we wanted adaptability and hybridization to be at the core of this class. So it's been a goal from the very beginning to actually get that there. So when you get hands-on with this, like, you're going to want to experiment. We want you to experiment. We know that there's going to be many builds that are very emergent, and I actually can't wait to see some of the cool stuff that people come up with once this goes live.
Yeah, exactly. Like, at its heart, Spiritborn is really all about like personalization, sort of expressing yourself. And so like, whichever spirit sort of resonates with you, we really want to allow you to mix and match them kind of to your heart's content, and sort of make that play style choice like fully customizable. And the primary way that we're doing that, or the main way that we're doing that, is the Spiritborn's class mechanic called Spirit Hall. The way the Spirit Hall works is you start your journey off by choosing one of 4 bonuses. At the top, the primary bonus. This is a like massive bonus that will add sort of a thematic effect to all of your skills of that type. So like an effect like the Jaguar will add extra strikes and that sort of thing to all your Jaguar skills. But a subtle but very important extra piece of this is that we'll also add that Spirit's tag to your entire skill kit. So every single part of your skill kit now has the Jaguar skill. And so even if you want to use like Centipede skills, you can still sort of hook into various parts of the Jaguar using this bonus. Then later on in your journey, you will unlock a second bonus. This is a set of 4 distinct bonuses from the first. Each of these kind of has a tie-in with the sort of core mechanics of each of the spirits. So we mentioned before sort of the new keywords that we were introducing, like with the Jaguar has ferocity, the Gorilla has resolve, those sorts of things. These give you an opportunity to sort of mix those into your kit, regardless of like if you are using those specific skills or not, and sort of like add that extra layer on top of your build. And when you're choosing these spirits, these can absolutely be the same. You can pick Gorilla and Gorilla, Jaguar, Jaguar, or you can mix and match them. And it's really important that like they all kind of flow and work together.
So if you look at the nesting doll effect that we have of your skill tree, your class mechanic, this can get complicated very quickly. And so one of the things that the team took on was this idea of finding what resonates most with each Guardian, and how do we create some level of overlap so that we can have some synergies between all of them.
Yeah, exactly. As we hit, like each of these has like very clear themes, right? You've got the Jaguar with its attack speed, you've got the Gorilla with its protection. You can definitely build into those, but it was important for us to sort of establish that these spirits, they don't exist like in isolation from each other. They have overlap. They have things that they both care about, and that allows us to sort of create these very hybrid-esque builds that work together. You know, just like an example, right? You've got like the Jaguar is a hunter. It's all about aggression and kind of chaos. And that's a thing. It loves that. But as a hunter, you're also sort of providing, you're also sustaining yourself, which is a thing that the Centipede also loves to do. And so they both care about healing, and they both have like different hooks that they can do for that. And so you can really like, if you're looking to get more healing into your build, you can add some Centipede, you can add some Jaguar, mix them together, you can make an entire build about healing that is Centipede and Jaguar. These aren't like prescribing ways to build, but they're more so just like, they're overlapping stats that allow them to sort of communicate with each other. So just a couple examples. We have, for instance, if you want to build like the Gorilla.
Ou comenta aqui o que você está achando desse lançamento. Eu tô ansioso para jogar isso aqui, viu?
Semi-tanky brawler who can just kind of go toe-to-toe with anything. And they sort of like dip into the stat of dodge, because dodge is a little bit inherently a slightly more RNG, a little bit more chaotic, kind of Jaguar, but it also kind of has that damage mitigation. And so you kind of combine them together and you have this very like retribution, but also fast-paced playstyle. Another example would be potentially if we think about like the Centipede and the Eagle. The Centipede's all about sort of debilitating your enemies and like making them weaker, and the Eagle's all about like kind of finding those weak points and like getting these high damage, you know, bursts off. So when you add those two together, they both care about vulnerable and sort of like turning the tables on all of your enemies. And so adding that together kind of creates this character that's sort of just able to like prioritize a target, weaken it, and then just like cull it from the battlefield.
Yeah, it's. I'm so glad Bjorn brought all these like really good examples for us. He's got a lot of footage for us to go through. It's awesome to see all these skills and how they work with the actual Spirit Guardians. And of course, the big popular topic that comes with every single class is itemization. And I know we have a lot to talk about with legendary aspects and some uniques as well. So Bjorn, Brent, like how does itemization work with Spiritborn?
Yeah, we all know that itemization is the heart of the game, right? And as we've been moving through our itemization journey with this game, we've had a really great opportunity to fold in all the feedback and how that applies to the Spiritborn as we've been developing. And one of the cool things that we did was took the opportunity to actually lean into the things that you get from items and see how they build into the Spirit's abilities themselves. So we're going to show a few examples of that. Now this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of really cool stuff coming, but we thought we'd do a really quick breakdown and show you what that looks like.
Yeah, so just hitting a couple examples, you know, we have added this large suite of Spiritborn legendaries and uniques to the game. But just to break down kind of some of our thoughts as we were working with them, sort of the types of legendaries you can expect to see. You know, one example, as we were just speaking about sort of these hybridization things, there's a lot of different stats in our game and sort of making them work together, not just like work together, but like be cool together. So we kind of have this category of items that will sort of interweave a couple of different stats. Secondly, we have our power augmentation legendaries. These just kind of let you take like your favorite skill and ascend it to its final form and just kind of like go crazy with it. And then thirdly, we have sub-powers.
De tudo que você viu aqui, você que está assistindo aqui, o que que você achou que mais chamou a atenção nessa classe?
And then finally, we have our unique items, which are there to enable you to sort of make the craziest builds you can think of. So moving on to a couple examples, just kind of one for each real quick. We have Tormentors. This is an example of a hybridization legendary. This one interweaves poisoning and thorns together, kind of in an interesting way that'll allow you to apply your thorns, in a different way than just like having something hit you all the time. It's great. You can probably see the connection. Gorilla, Centipede, they'll love this sort of thing. Moving on to an example of a power augmentation, we have Bristling Vengeance. This takes the payback seal that we kind of hit on before. Usually it's like a smaller AoE like right in front of you that just hits one enemy, but this one really allows it to sort of like extend its range, hit multiple enemies, as well as apply your thorns over an area. And then thirdly, we have an example of one of our sub-powers. This one's called a Pestilent Swarm. The cool thing that we're kind of trying to out with each of our sub-powers is there are multiple legendaries for them, and they sort of allow you to customize how they work. So there's like one that'll let your Pestilent Swarm like poison enemies, one that'll make it spiral, one that'll even make it orbit. You can sort of like combine those, like you can have it orbit and spiral, or poison. You can just have it shoot off, kind of whatever works for your build. We really want people to be able to experiment and play with those sub-powers. And then just a couple of teasers, some of our uniques. These are some unique boots that basically allow you to override your evade skill with Soar, just get the ultimate amount of mobility you can think of. The neat thing about that is also that it allows you potentially like to take Soar off your bar. You can't let it go, but you at least kind of get to keep it with you in that evade slot. And then another example would be our unique Quarterstaff. Which is one of the two weapons we're adding with the Spiritborn. This one sort of allows you to ramp up your basic attacks. Spiritborn's basic attacks are a little bit special. They're kind of really cool. They're these 3-hit combos, and each third hit does like a special thing. And this specific unique basically lets you get that third attack all the time. So then we have to take their third attack and make it a triple version that almost turns them into a different skill entirely.
Yeah, this is awesome, seeing all the couple of examples of uniques. As Brent mentioned, this is just kind of like the tip of the iceberg. Oh, yeah. I personally would take the Soar boots all day. Being able to use, Soar as an evade is absolutely amazing. But I want to give a huge thanks to Bjorn for walking us through all the skills, especially associated with the Spirit Guardians, and of course, the itemization across the whole entire class. We will actually have an extensive look for the entire community after the show on our blog. It will provide a great amount of detailed mention here immediately following the stream, so you can check it out and do a deeper dive with the Spiritborn yourself. Now we're going to bring back everyone to get into our Q&A for all things Spiritborn. Now we're ready for our community Q&A, where we'll answer your burning questions for all things Spiritborn. If you have questions, again, please drop them in Twitch chat, and we'll try to get through as many as possible through the whole entire Q&A process. Thank you guys for joining us. We did some musical chairs to get everyone back up here during that quick little interstitial. I know as questions are coming up, one big question that everyone always asks, and I know we've probably seen it a million times in chat already, is like, hey, we have the Spiritborn. This is a brand new class. Why not something like a class from a prior game, like a paladin or something from there?
Yeah, right out of the gate, right?
Right out of the gate.
You know, when we started off, one of the key things that were really important to us was to make sure that the class came from the place that we were going. We also knew that, you know, we did a really good job at revisiting classic archetypes like the barbarian and the necro. And so we were in this position where doing something new was a great opportunity. It was something that allowed us to inject some fresh gameplay in, and going after the Spiritborn was a wider palette to play with. And so making sure that we were building something from the ground up from Nahantu was really the driving factor of this, and we're very proud of where we landed at today.
Awesome. Another question that this is everyone. This is the first time you guys are explaining. This is everyone's favorite moment where I butcher Twitch names like no other. But Arcphoenix asks, wait, the lore, like where have the Spiritborn been in D3, D2? Why are they not fighting Mephisto themselves?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before. Like this is a religion that has been building up over time. They're a little more secluded, and really one of the things that we looked at is like the early exploration of Akrat, right?
Yeah.
Like there wasn't much development that was going in, so that was like a new frontier for us to work with.
Yeah, and in general, the Spiritborn, which you'll notice when you do play the game, they are very scattered throughout Nahantu. It's not like they have this massive presence where you walk in and you're like, there they are. You know, it's like a little different than that. They're hidden, they're in the jungle, and they don't necessarily want to be seen. And this has sort of been the idea this entire time. It takes a lot of devotion to be a Spiritborn. This isn't something that you can hop in and out of. So when we talk about being a Spiritborn, these are people who have devoted their entire lives to be doing this one thing, and that's what they're doing in Nahantu. They're not exploring really.
I know we've actually gotten a few questions about this specifically. This is a pretty good question for Bjorn and Nick, because a lot of people have noticed, like, hey, quarterstaff and new weapons. Like, what are the new weapon types for Spiritborn specifically?
Sure. Yeah, Spiritborn's bringing 2 new weapons with it. First off, we have the glaive, kind of its premier weapon that you see in all the key art. That's really the weapon for like a hunter. It's great for like taking down priority enemies. It's got built-in elite damage, that sort of thing. And then the second weapon we're adding is the quarterstaff. This is a faster weapon that they can use to even sort of like add like block chance and that sort of thing to it. So it's almost like a little bit of a pseudo-defensive weapon, but it's also got very high attack speed.
Yeah, from a fantasy standpoint, it was really cool to like try to create weapons that made sense for, again, like Brent mentioned, like where the class is from. So like, you know, a glaive makes a lot of sense for like cutting through the jungle, you know, being an aggressive weapon, being an attack-based weapon. The quarterstaff is really cool because it's like, you could imagine like, how do they train with this? They probably found like really strong branches from like trees that were really important to them, and they start to like train with that, and eventually they kind of start to perfect that craft and that bow staff. So there's a lot of really cool fantasy that we can like, the art team can really dig into.
It also looks cool.
Yeah.
like just to be frank, like if we're talking about a martial arts class, like having the bow staff or the glaive to like really extend some of those key poses that we got with the martial arts stuff that we put into the game. I mean, it looks really good.
Yeah, it's awesome to see like new weapons for the Spiritborn with Vessel of Hatred. So another question that we have here, this is from Bucko351, easy name. Question, what's the difference between the Spiritborn and the Druid class? The Druid class currently has bonds with like the stag, the wolf, the eagle, and the snake. Like what's kind of the changes between that and something like the Spiritborn?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the Spiritborn, you're not necessarily turning into this animal that we're talking about. This is a spirit guardian that lives in the spirit realm, and you're channeling this spirit guardian, and the manifestation that we're talking about is what comes out. So when we talk about like ferocity or something, that's something that you see in the jungle, right? So you have this jaguar that's recognizable, and that's this manifestation. It's the best way to show that. So if we had a different belief, then it would manifest in a different way. Versus the druid, you sort of really encompass the entire animal.
And you see that in the gameplay quite a bit, where I think, Nick, you were mentioning before, where it's like, yeah, I have this bond with the centipede. When I call him in, I call the centipede in to deal with this side of the combat, and then I go off and I start managing the other side of the combat. So you really see this like combat partnership between the Guardians and the Spiritborn, which is incredibly unique.
We got a question here from Kat the Dewey. They're asking, we've seen 4 Spirit Guardians. Are there other Spirit Guardians that were considered potentially?
Yeah, look, I'll spill the beans. I'll talk about it. You know, when we're choosing the spirits, we played around with a lot of concepts. Super abstract stuff that weren't animal-based. We talked about, okay, if I'm from the jungle, these things would probably represent things I know, which brought us to animals. And when we think about protection and strength, we originally had some conversations around an elephant. Like, what does an elephant mean? If there's a animal that represents like family and protection the most, the elephant is one of those. The gorilla was also being talked about at the same time, and they mean the same thing. So when we looked at them side by side, that really came down to like which one can convey the best powers, what gives you the right movement and visuals that you would need for the power set itself.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I was
go
going
ahead.
to say, like, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out, like, there's a lot of collaboration, and sometimes art will inform design, design will inform art. So I think this is a great spot where, like Brian was saying, like, we're looking at a lot of different things, but like when you think about Nahantu, when you think about like the canopy of the jungle, and you start thinking about how does that protect what's in the jungle, like the gorilla just made a lot of sense, like thematically. So like we start to find those moments, right? And you think about the centipede, it's like there's like the ground and the roots of the jungle, like what comes up, there's insects. So, you know, we spent a lot of time like exploring that. But when you think about the gameplay connection, poisons, fears, right? The centipede, that this like life and death kind of cycle they talked about, like the centipede makes a lot of sense. So we really start to try to connect the dots in really interesting ways. And those are the ones that really stick.
Fictionally, the idea that these things are created based on human beliefs, we believe in more than 4 things, right? So the idea that we could expand this out well beyond the class, we've developed more lore than you're actually going to see in the game for the Spiritborn, because we want this thing to live beyond just Diablo 4.
Awesome. I know this one's a little bit for Bjorn. We'll test his skill knowledge here, but a question from Churney Fire was, does the echoing poison effect work on enemies not poisoned by you? Is there like a radius limit? Like, how does it work specifically?
Yeah, there's a small radius limit to it, but that can be extended through things like tempering and that sort of thing. It will do any poisoned enemies on the screen.
Oh, nice. That sounds crazy. So yeah, and then we have a question from Crawling Out of the Spiral. This one's a lore question specifically. Did Mephisto know about the veil between Sanctuary and the Spirit Realm, and like the corruption within the jungles during Diablo 2? Like, was he able to sense it during that time? I know we had talked about like the Spirit Realm being this pure and like untouched place. So.
Yeah, we can definitely assume that Mephisto knew there was something there. When it comes to the lore of Nahantu, there are a lot of protection that happened during Mephisto's corruption. He wasn't able to break through the veil, so that is something that, you know, that's why it's so dire now. But definitely he had this feeling for sure.
Question for not MVP. How does the resource for the Spiritborn work? Do they generate it like passively, or how does that work specifically?
Sure. The Spiritborn's primary resource is called Vigor. It does not inherently recharge passively. You'll generate it by using your basic attacks. But sort of like the key with Spiritborn being very customizable, like one of the first choices that you'll be able to make in your tree with your basic attacks is you can sort of like customize like how you will build the spirit beyond that, whether it's like by poisoning enemies or by blocking damage, that sort of thing, to really like kind of make the resource work the way you want it to work. And then later on, there are also some uniques that will allow you to further customize sort of like how your build influences the resource generation.
Awesome. I know we just talked about the weapons and stuff, and there's like follow-up questions of like, are the Spiritborn only using two-handed weapons for this class?
Yes.
The short answer.
Yes. They are. The other question that we're getting is, is there like a special quest for before you can actually start a Spiritborn or create a Spiritborn? Or are there quests that are maybe specific to the class itself?
Yeah, well, we're going to definitely be introducing the class mechanic similarly to the way that we introduced it with the other classes. As far as the beginning of the story is concerned, you know, we really want to jump straight into continuing the chapter of hatred, right? Like what happened when
Esse aí,
Aurel
pessoal.
left. We want to jump right into it, get right back into
Bom,
the story,
pessoal,
and so we're going to pick up
vou
from the
saindo
perspective
aqui que eu
where
tenho muitas
Aurel
coisas
left
para
off.
resolver.
Awesome.
Um abraço e
That
até a
was